And here I'm your host of Behind the Mask. And again, another friend and colleague from the industry, and I'm sure you already know him, but Dr. Josh Liu. Welcome to Behind the Mask.
Thanks, Ed. I'm excited to be here.
And Josh, you're the CEO of Seamless MD. Tell us a little bit about Seamless MD.
Yeah, absolutely. So Seamless MD provides a digital care journey platform. So essentially, we digitally engage and monitor patients as they go through a healthcare journey, like pre and post surgery, maternity care, chronic care, and other things.
That's cool. And I notice a lot of Canada on your LinkedIn. Are you actually Canadian or where are you from?
Yeah, so I was actually born and raised in Toronto, Canada. So grew up in the Canadian healthcare system, but then since we started the company, we started doing work both in the US and in Canada. So I have the privilege or the headache of having to understand both healthcare systems, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. I actually went to Canadian schools for part of my youth and learned to sing the Canadian national anthem both in English and French every day as school started.
That's bringing me back. I'm curious how it works in the States, but in Canada, like as a kid growing up, you actually had to stand and like maybe sing, but at least stand for the anthem every day through elementary and high school. Is that the same in the US?
I recall when I came to the US, so my first few years were in Germany, but we lived close to a Canadian Air Force base in Solingen, Germany. And so there we did have to stand up and we sang the national anthem in both languages. And then when I came to the United States, we did the Pledge of Allegiance and we stood up and crossed a hand over the heart, did Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know if that's still done today or not, but that's certainly the way that I was raised. And I don't mind it at all. And I was very cross cultural. So it was very cool.
Awesome.
All right. So that's a little bit about you and the profession. But as you know, we jump into like three main areas like who are you really? And how did you get here and where are you going? So with that, we're going to jump right in. So obviously, you're CEO today, you're a leader. Was there an age where you sort of came to the concept, well, I'm a leader?
Uh, yeah, I think I was very much an accidental leader. So, growing up, I was very academically oriented. So, when I got into high school, I was so focused on you gotta get good grades to get into a good, university. But when I went through high school, I actually became really passionate about STEM programs. So, like summer camps and summer programs, kind of doing STEM things outside the classroom. And I had some really great experiences. And then I just started talking to other kids who've been through STEM programs. We kind of realized that we all weren't aware of all the opportunities other kids had. So I knew about some things that other kids didn't know about, and vice versa. So then I just randomly started this website that would post different opportunities for kids, and then I'd share opportunities through an email list with other students in high school, and then it started to blow up. And essentially, we got, I call it my first acquisition. We were acquired by a large nonprofit that ran science fairs across Canada. And basically, I ended up leading this student-run organization as part of this nonprofit, and it grew to like over 200 schools across the country on this network, sharing opportunities of STEM. And I never planned, for this like website and email list to turn into a national network of students. And so I don't think I was a great leader, by the way. I think I made a ton of mistakes, but I was kind of like accidentally falling into it.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. It's always super interesting. Is there something that your parents forced you to do, Josh, when you were a kid that at the time you were like, oh, really? But now as an adult, you're like, I'm so glad they did that.
Yeah, so the one that comes to mind, this also wasn't high school. So I wasn't like, as I started getting more involved in my community through things like STEM, and I got more involved in school clubs, I started getting into like public speaking a little bit, or trying to step outside my comfort zone. Because again, I was very academic up until that point. And, I didn't really want to do this, but my dad actually enrolled me in this public speaking course. And so I would go like once a week at like 5 in the evenings. And the thing that actually was very uncomfortable for me at the start was this course wasn't meant for high school kids. So this course was actually meant for adults. So there were folks there in their 20s all the way up to their 50s or 60s. And I'm just like this high school kid who's also trying to learn how to do public speaking. And so I mean, initially I felt really out of place. But the folks are super welcoming there. I think everyone there, regardless of age, was trying to improve speaking. And so I'm actually really glad my dad, enrolled me into that, even though at first I was like, this is very awkward for me, but it was worth it. I learned a lot.
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, what was the biggest single reason that you ended up in healthcare? You became a physician. What was the impetus behind that?
Yeah, so this is probably not obvious now, but I actually grew up with Tourette syndrome. It was pretty bad when I was a kid. So like when I started getting tics when I was probably 7 or 8, and got diagnosed. And then I was I think one of the lucky ones where by the time I got to sort of adulthood, it became quite mild. So most folks don't actually realize it. But growing up, I actually wanted to get into medicine. And initially, I wanted to be a pediatric neurologist because I wanted to help kids who struggled with Tourette's.
Yeah.
Funny enough, when I got into med school, I started shadowing neurologists and then realized I didn't want to do neurology clinically. But it got me into medicine. It's the reason I'm still in healthcare.
Okay, yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, and I didn't know that about you. So speaking of which, what is one thing that most of your coworkers wouldn't know about you that you're able to share with us?
Yeah, so we actually before we started Seamless MD, I had another failed startup. So it's funny that a lot of people hear about the stuff that worked out, in the public, in the media, but a lot of the failures are kind of hidden behind the scenes. So when I was I guess probably a year before we started Seamless MD, I tried starting a totally different healthcare venture with two friends from my med school class, and we quit slash gave up after about 4 to 5 months. And I think one of the challenges I recognized was we were all clinical people. We didn't have that diverse skill set of technology or business or other things, and so that was missing. And that's why when I started Seamless MD, I teamed up with folks who had more of a complementary skill set around engineering and business, and I think that gave us kind of the full DNA to actually get something off the ground. But like no one really talks about those sorts of failures publicly too often.
Yeah, that's good. What is your defining moment? Was there a catalyst that sort of reinforced your trajectory or maybe changed your direction in life or profession?
Yeah, I'll give you two, and they all actually relate to me getting on this entrepreneurial journey. So when I was in med school, over 10 years ago, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So how a lot of folks who start clinical training, they know they want to be a primary care physician
Yeah.
or a cardiologist or a surgeon. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I felt a little bit lost. And then I ended up actually getting this great mentor who said, you know what, Josh, why don't you spend a summer with us focusing on health system issues? So I had a mentor who ran an innovation lab where they actually focused on redesigning care delivery. And so I ended up actually working there for a summer, learning all about quality, safety, and readmissions. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, I like this idea of having a broader system impact on patient care. It didn't have to be tied to a certain specialty. So from there, I actually became obsessed with the readmissions problem. I lost sleep some nights, like coming up, like I would wake up in the middle of the night with some idea about readmissions. I'd write it down and I'd email it to my PI. And then the next morning I'd realize it doesn't make any sense. But like that's how obsessed I was with the problem. And in my last year of med school, a year after I had that other failed company, I ended up learning about this incubator called the Next 36, where you could actually meet like-minded entrepreneurial folks with different backgrounds. So I went through that incubator. I met my two co-founders who are both on the computer science engineering side. And I said, hey, here's this readmissions problem that I've been, really obsessed with. Maybe we could build something to help support patients and prevent problems like a readmission. Long story short, we started that company through that incubator. I graduated from med school, got into residency, never started it because we went full time on Seamless. And so learning about quality and safety and then getting to that incubator totally changed my trajectory. Like I always knew I wanted to do entrepreneurial things down the road. I thought maybe 10 years after I did my training, I would go and start something. Never really thought I would start it right away. But yeah, 10 years later, I'm still doing it.
No, that's great. Yeah. I really like, and I really like what you're doing as well. So what about the last time you cried? So can you share with us sort of the last time like you got like emotional about something?
Yeah, so I can't remember the last time I cried, but I do remember one of the few times I've actually cried in this entrepreneurial journey. And so this was gosh, back in I think I want to say 2017 maybe, so about 5, 6, 7 years ago. Um, it was a couple of years after we had raised a seed round for Seamless, and we had probably too quickly built out a sales team before we were really ready to scale that far. And so over the course of a couple of years, we had a lot of folks on that side, either leave or it just didn't work out. And I take responsibility for that, right? Ultimately, it's my job to make sure the team is well, supported and trained to be successful in a commercial role. But long story short, I think we had dwindled down to, I had one salesperson left at the time. And I told him like, hey, just so you know, like we weren't ready to scale. And so I'm not planning to hire any more salespeople anytime soon. It's just going to be you and me. And I know when you started this journey with us, you weren't expecting to be the only salesperson on the team. You were here with a bunch of other people. And so I totally get if you're like, you know what, Josh, this is not what I signed up for. Like I'm probably going to move on. And he looks at me and he says, Josh, like, I believe in the mission of this company. Like I believe in, your leadership. I'm on board. I'm all in on this. Like I'm not going anywhere. He didn't even like take time to like go away and think about it. He was just so sure. And I just started crying. Like
Yeah.
I never cried in front of anyone in the company before. I think that's one of the few times I had because I was so moved. I'm like, oh my gosh, like here I am, like we're struggling, I'm struggling, and you had no reason to still believe. You've seen all the challenges we had.
Yeah.
But the fact that you didn't have to even think about it, that you knew that you were in on this, it just moved me so much. I'm like, wow,
That's,
like not what I expected.
yeah. Yeah. That's really a gift. What was something you really wanted in life and didn't get?
Yeah, so the one that comes to mind is when I when I was in my last year of high school, there was this really big scholarship that I had applied for, but it was super hard to get, super competitive. It's like a national scholarship, and I had all these like mentors who were like a year older than me who had um, received it, were successful, and they were all just like, "Oh, Josh, you can do it! Like you're awesome." And then I got to like a regional interview stage, and I was so arrogant. Like they had pumped my tires. I was like, okay, I got this. Like I'm gonna nail this interview. And I was just bad. I was just bad. And I think as I started to see like the interviews going poorly, it further got into my head. I felt more pressure. It got worse. And even after it was over, even though like deep down I knew like I wasn't making it to the next round, I still had this hope, this false hope. And eventually I got the call that, I didn't make it. Um, and, initially I was just really disappointed in myself. But looking back, I think the biggest lesson I learned was around humility. Like, I think I've realized that like everything has to be earned. And first of all, you can't control everything. There's always luck involved in stuff like this. But looking back, like my arrogance was a huge mistake. And now I believe in like it's important for me to believe I can do things, but I also don't believe I'm entitled to anything.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
to earn everything.
Yeah, that surprises me, right? Because I see you as a very humble leader and stuff like that. I can't imagine that version of Josh from the past, but that's great that you had that experience and you learned from it, and it helped shape you to who you are today as a leader. Tell me the last time you either sent a thank you card or received a thank you card, like a handwritten note of some sort.
Yeah, I have to give credit to the CEO of a company that I advise. So his name is Albert Tai. He's the founder and CEO of a company called Hypercare. They're like a clinical communications platform, so in the healthcare tech space. And he is just, first of all, like an amazing human being. Like he is one of the best relationship people, like authentic relationship people. And one of the things he does really well is like he's so good at things like the thank you cards. So like, I don't expect it, right? Like I'm involved to help them because I generally like him and the team, and I just want to see them do well. Like I don't really care to get anything in return. I'm a big like pay it forward person, but like he still will always be like every Christmas. It's like you gotta get a card, gotta get a handwritten note, and like receiving it, like I do get that joy and appreciation. It makes me realize, oh, I should probably write some handwritten notes more. But he
Yeah.
does that so well.
Yeah, no, it's sort of a lost art, as I call it, but you still see it happening. And I recently highlighted a note I got on a napkin. This has happened a couple of times from flight attendants,
Mm.
and I always thought that's a super nice touch, because they won't benefit from it, right? They'll never see me again, probably, and all the other people that are sitting there. But they went out of their way to do it. It's like, wow, and here I am talking about it. So I think it's a pretty cool thing. What about quitting? Have you ever quit something and then later regret it? Like maybe it was all right to quit skating lessons, you don't regret it, but was there something else, that you may have quit and now you wish you would have kept up with it?
That's a honestly, yeah, that's a tough one. And it's not because I've never quit anything. Um, well, a semi quit. So I'm you see me like I've been writing a lot on things
Yeah.
like LinkedIn and Twitter and all that. But that's actually because like I've always loved writing. I actually when I it wasn't my what was it? My last year of undergrad, I started this blog. And the idea of the blog initially was to sort of not commemorate, but basically log my journey just applying to med school. Like I wanted to do it for myself.
Yeah.
And then what happened was my school went on strike for a couple months. And so I had not much to do. So I just started writing more and more. And I started writing about like my lessons learned from undergrad and things like that. And then the blog started to take off among undergraduates and high school kids in Canada. And so I started writing, it became quite popular. And then I basically loved writing since then. But I actually stopped writing regularly from like, I think I want to say 2016 to 2022, because I got so busy with Seamless. And I picked up writing again this year, and I realized like I love writing. Like I kind of quit it for 6 years. Then like I started writing more and more, since Seamless started, more about like healthcare and technology and all that. But I wish I didn't quit. I feel like writing helps me think. Like for me personally, whether it's just I have the ideas and I'm just trying to present it more concisely and clearly, writing helps me do that. But even if I don't know what I want to say, like let's say I'm working on a problem in the company, a strategy problem, and all I have is just the problem listed. If I just start writing what I'm thinking, eventually I can find the ideas on the page and then turn that into a solution. But I needed the writing to get my brain going. And so I'm curious how many people are that way. But for me, like writing is thinking, if that makes sense. And I wish I didn't quit it 6 years ago.
No, yeah, it totally makes sense. It's the same for me, helps provide the clarity, helps you, a lot of times I've heard people say that, when you really write things down, that's when it starts to become hardwired in your brain. And yeah, a lot of times you can ask people like, what's your strategy, whether it's on life or IT or whatever. And then, or you say, who has a strategy? They'll raise their hand. Then you say, can you show me the document? And they don't have a document. It's all here. And so it's not really crystallized or thought out, but the process of writing it down makes you crystallize things. So yeah. And I always encourage people like, yeah, if you start a blog, don't stop. Even if you only have 3 people reading it, don't stop, and then it's therapeutic as well. I think bring a lot of healing and bring people to and help others, even if it's just one. So chatting to the next generation, which we were just doing, what's one thing that they should relish in the journey? So a very carefully worded question there, Josh, that not like a piece of advice that you would say at a graduation ceremony, but is there something that you rushed through in your journey thus far that you wish you would have taken more time to relish that part of it, like enjoy that moment?
Yeah, I think one of the things I always feel like I could do better and our team could do better is to celebrate even like the smallest victories as a team. And to be honest, it got harder since 2020, right? So when we used to be in the office, we would always do like every Monday we'd have a company-wide all hands, and we do it in the office, right? So even the smallest thing, you could high five someone about it, you could like applaud. And we shifted to virtual for a lot of these things. And yeah, it's still better to have it than not have it, even if it's on Zoom, but it's not the same. And so I think one of the things I realized is, you have to relish even and celebrate even the smallest things, because those are the things often that we remember. Like, I think in the day, like, well, no, how do I put this? Like, no one, yes, you'll remember getting to the top of a mountain, you'll remember the major accomplishments, but really, I think what you'll really appreciate is like the little accomplishments and obstacles you overcame along the way. Like, people tell you that stuff, but until you lived it, I don't think you truly appreciate it, if that makes sense. Like, everyone says that going into it, you're like, yeah, sure. I just want to get to the top, right? But then once you start making some progress, you realize how the best parts are actually a lot of like the random things in between.
Yeah. Yeah. Really well stated. So you've built this great company, Seamless MD, and what else professionally are you aspiring to do? It's like, so where are you going? In addition to Seamless MD, or maybe it's just Seamless MD, however you'd like to frame it.
Yeah, so honestly, right now it's all Seamless MD. And I think the fascinating thing about building a company is, the longer we survive, it never gets actually easier, but we just get better at things. And I think in many ways that means we earn the right to take on bigger and bigger challenges. And so, like, I think a lot about, well, where could Seamless be in 5 years, and how can we be better and different? So, for example, right now, like, we really focus on health systems and hospitals as kind of our customer partners. But the bigger vision is, well, like, why can't Seamless be the platform that home care also uses to manage a patient, or we're trying to get more into like primary care and population health very soon. How can we be the single platform that supports the patient no matter who the provider actually is? And so, I think as we think about how we could grow, it's really about how do we go across the continuum. The other thing too is, I think, we're only North America, so eventually truly going global into, Europe and Asia and beyond is a big thing. And so, if we're lucky enough to make it there and earn the right to solve those problems, like that's kind of what I think about. It almost feels like there's always another mountain we could choose to climb. I think that's both the blessing and the curse of building a company, right? Like, you can, there's always another mountain you could choose to climb. And I think if you have a team of motivated people, they'll always want to keep climbing up. No one wants to just kind of meander on the same, plateau.
Yeah, no, I hear it. This just reminded me, have you ever watched any of those Netflix they're sort of documentaries, but there's a little Hollywood flair done with them. There's one on Office Space. What was that guy's name? That built the company that built offices all around the world. Dang, I'm forgetting it. But the other one, say again?
Wait, so he built offices, or was it the rental thing?
Yeah, renting office space.
Oh, the WeWork thing?
Yeah, WeWorks. And then the latest one I'm watching is on Uber. So I just started episode one. Did you ever watch it?
I watched the first episode of that recently. Yeah.
And do you ever think, like, I do not want to be like that person? I was just curious if you watch those and think about yourself as a CEO. It's like, what can you learn from those guys, those leaders?
Yeah, you almost so you don't want to be the ones where they get Joseph Gordon-Levitt to play you, because it may not be a good one. But you do want maybe the actual documentaries where you get actually interviewed and your team gets actually interviewed, and your customers do too. Okay, those might be the good ones.
Yeah.
But if they're like reenacting it, yeah, it's probably a bad sign.
Yeah. It's like, I do not want to be like, I make sure my kids watch it too, because I was just like, from a leadership perspective, like, I know some of this is probably fabricated to make a big, show and stuff, but there's probably some truth beneath, some of the key themes here. So pay attention. Hey, so we talked a lot about you, sort of who you are, where you're going, how you got there. But on the personal side, we just talked about the professional side. Are there any big challenges or goals that you have on a personal side, like for the next couple of years, like, climbing Mount Everest or whatever it might be?
Yeah, honestly, no. And I think part of one of the blessings and curse of being an entrepreneur is that your job is your hobby.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where like I remember like I one of my executives like she'll randomly message me because she would see that I'm like working on something late at night. She must be being like, "Hey Josh, like you should go sleep or go do something that like fun, right? Go. Isn't there some hobby you could do?" And I'm just like, honestly, I'm like, this is my hobby. This is what I. And so there's no other thing. I think from a personal development point of view, though, I think one of the things I'm still kind of working on is um I am trying to be more direct. I think one of my biggest challenges that I'm actually, and I'm not sure this is a healthcare thing, but like I'm kind of like I don't like confrontation. Sometimes I'll avoid the difficult conversation with people because I don't like I don't want someone to be hurt or to feel bad. But the thing that you realize when you talk to people is that they actually want the truth. So like we'll think no, they can't handle the truth. But of course, if someone asks me that question, I'd be like, yeah, I want the truth. I can handle it.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they can handle the truth, right? And so I think I can do a much better job being direct. That's something that I've struggled with, to be honest. But I think most people want that. And
Yeah.
so it's one thing that I'm trying to get better on over the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I think I could benefit from that as well. So Josh, you're a great leader, a great person. I appreciate you coming on Behind the Mask. Not an easy thing to do, but and I follow you very closely on both Twitter and LinkedIn. So how can people learn more about Seamless MD and follow you? Because you put out the content you put out, it's just not about Seamless MD, but just things that are very helpful from a leadership perspective, a strategy perspective, trying to change the world for good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, you can find me at Joshua PLIU on both Twitter and LinkedIn. So easy to find.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And from there, you'll find all the things you want to know about Seamless MD and about the different insights that you provide. Great summaries too, because I didn't make it to health, or I don't make it to all the Becker session or whatever. And you're like always providing these great summaries. So
You don't have to go anywhere.
yeah, right. Yeah, I save a lot of money. Yeah. Anyways, thanks again for watching Behind the Mask.